world needs good, strong dads who can teach people that when they're 5 and 6 and 8 and 12. So when they get to the point where they really need it later, it's already natural for them. And so there's this desperate need to have good dads who can, with love, but firmness too, teach their kids to do hard things.
Hey, welcome back to the Oz Shift podcast. I'm your host, Anthony Trucks. And as always, we get an amazing guest. And this guest has I'm going to say this the thing. There's a lot of people I talk to, and there's a few people I would willingly hop in a phone conversation with and talk for a little while, because I feel like after a while I get to know who somebody is, not in a bad way, but I'm like, we have nothing in common. That was not the case when I had a chance to talk to our next guest, just randomly connected through a friend. And he's on the show now because I believe what he has to share from life experience, from perspectives, are valuable, not just because they're in line with mine, but I also believe that he does carry probably opposite views, but there's a strength to him as a human, as a man. And we also have a kindredness in parenting. Like there's a huge connection there to making sure our lineage is taken care of properly. And so as we go through this today, know this individual is a speaker, they're an author, they've got a book that we will dig into a little bit later. They've had some crazy life experiences, but they've also been featured on like Forbes and Speaker Magazine, different TV shows, as much as like different business blogs as well, because they have a great business they run. But I really want, as we always do, to pick apart their life from the awe shift moments, find out how this person was able to make successful things in life happen to get to that point of being a person we want to have in the show. So without further ado, please help me welcome EksAyn Anderson. How you doing, man?
Thanks, Anthony. Thanks for having me on the show. You're one of the few people who can say my name right. So
hey, no problem. And well, my question would be, where does, because nobody expects anybody to be named EksAyn. I would have never thought of this. It sounds like some weird like chemical you have like, on the bottom of your pantry. So where did the name come from?
I got it. They say, Anthony, that it's Swedish. The issue is I've been to Sweden, and I got to tell you, there is not a single person in Sweden named EksAyn, not one.
Interesting.
So my wife calls me X, and I tend to joke around about that. It's probably not a good thing if your wife calls you X, but I'm my wife's ex, and we're
there
married.
You go.
So,
hey, just anyway. My story. My wife and I were divorced, so my current wife is also my ex-wife, first wife. I can say all those kind of things. She's also my sister.
Oh,
yeah, we were divorced and we got
awesome.
Remarried. So yes, I'm married to my ex-wife, if that makes sense. Anyway.
Well, see, we have that in common as well, Anthony. See, I'm my wife's ex, and you're also your wife's ex, so that's great. That's great.
Even more kindred connections. So there's always the first question I ask. Go anywhere you want with it. You're allowed to answer in any way that your heart calls you to answer. But here's the question. I'm walking around town. I sit down next to this cool guy. The cool guy is you, and you turn and start talking to me for some reason. Why should I listen to you?
Oh, man, that is a great question. Well, the one thing that's a little bit unique about me, that might be a little bit different than other people, is when I was 8 years old, I watched my mom die. And I knew what life was like before she died, and I knew what life was like after she died. And I can tell you there were little tiny things that she did that have a huge effect on me. And I can say with authority that I know that this little tiny thing she did that took 5 seconds when I was 5 or 6 or 7, that still profoundly affects me today, profoundly affects me because I didn't have any other time with her between, after she died when I was 8. Yeah. So, great question.
There's a lot of stuff that flows in there too, because when I think about that, I was at 30 years old when I watched my mom pass as well from MS. But I can only imagine like a childhood having that, because that's formative years. Those are years when you're developing and figuring things out. Was there we'll call it like an up and down of emotional? Is there a journey that you navigated from those points forward? Like, how did you handle that experience at that age?
Yeah, it's great. That's also a great question. Well, let me just tell you a little bit of the story. So, when I was young, I like to draw trees, and I draw them the way I saw them. You can imagine I draw these trees with every branch, every little vein in the leaves. You can imagine a tree with dozens of leaves. And I went to school and I saw how these other kids drew trees, and they drew trees. You've probably seen the two lines with a little poofy cloud on top. And when I saw how the other children drew trees, I stopped drawing them the way I used to, and I started drawing them the way the other kids did. So I kind of followed, just kind of wanted to fit in. I found out later that my mom, when she saw this, she cried. Anyway, fast forward a little bit. I was at a Little League game. I'm playing. By the way, I got to tell you, I wasn't that good at Little League. I was pathetic.
Yeah. Right.
You can either be good and hit the ball, or if you were pathetic like I was, you just hold the bat out and, the ball would hit it and fall. It's called a bunt. I had one bunt the entire season this season. Anyway, not here to tell you how bad I was at Little League, but I got home from this Little League game and my mom complained of a really severe headache. I mean, it was bad. And she wasn't the kind who she didn't get migraines or anything. My dad became concerned. He said, we're going to take mom to the hospital. And I remember being there, giving my mom a hug in the front room of our home. And then she, I told her I loved her, and she walked. My dad and mom drove away. I went to my uncle, who was happened to be visiting us at the time, and I was kind of a little bit nervous. I went to him and I said, "Is my mom going to die?" And he looked at me and he said, "No, your mom's not going to die. She probably just has a migraine." And I said, "Do you promise? Do you promise my mom's not going to die?" And he said, "I promise. She's not going to die. She's going to be fine. Just relax." I went downstairs. I wanted to believe him. I climbed up on my bunk bed, and I started reading this book. I still remember the book. It was a book about squirrels, and I'm waiting for my parents to get home, and I wait, and I wait, and they don't get home. And I probably, it was probably 2 or 3 in the morning before I finally fell asleep. Anyway, the next day, I got up. I was a little bit anxious, and I climbed off my bunk bed, and I went to the door of my room, and I opened it, and on the other side of this room, I could see my dad, but something was different. My mom was not there. Instead, there was a neighbor and a friend and another neighbor and another neighbor and another friend and another neighbor. It seemed like half the neighborhood was at our house. And as I got a little closer, I could see that my dad had been crying. He had tears on his cheeks. And as I got even closer, he was really trying hard not to cry. And he was trying to hold his emotion in, but he kind of gathered the children together and he said words I'll never forget. He said, I think our mom is going to leave us. And I remember I went into a panic. I said, Dad, we got to do something. We got to do something. We got to pray. We got to do something. What had happened is my mom had a cerebral hemorrhage, and a blood vessel in her brain had burst, and she was now brain dead at the hospital, being kept alive by a life support system. And remember, a couple days later, we went down to the hospital, and I could see my mom there. She had tubes coming out of her nose. She couldn't breathe on her own. She had a machine that was breathing for her, basically a lung machine, a respiration machine. And I was scared. And I was 8 years old. Here's my mom. She doesn't look like my mom. She's got all these machines and tubes hooked up to her. And there was a time that where they needed to take my mom off life support. There was nothing they could do. Her brain was dead. And I remember when they took my mom off of life support, she kind of crinkled up and turned bluish. And I wanted to give her a kiss. I was afraid to, because she didn't look like my mom. So I went and kind of faked one. Kissed the air. And I walked out. Well, My mom died that day, and as an 8-year-old boy, I watched her die. I did learn from a friend of the family after I walked out that my mom went from being kind of crinkled up to where she spread her wings, spread her arms, almost like she was coming into a beautiful place. But here's my question for you. How do you think I draw trees now?
Right, whatever way you want to draw trees.
I got to tell you, that's right. I draw them the way I want to, the way my mom would want me to, right? I mean, just knowing that my mom wanted me to draw trees the way I see them. So in a sense, even right now, I'm sharing this story with you. I'm sharing my heart with you. Figuratively, I'm drawing trees the way I see them. And I really firmly believe, Anthony, that what you and I do in work it's great. When people try to excel and do well at work, it's a good thing. But I think that the kind of effect we're going to have in the world long term is going to be so much more profound by what we do in our own homes. What we do with as dads, what we do as in our families. I'll ask people, and I ask a question to people sometimes. I say, do you know what your great great grandfather did, or your great
Most
great
people do.
grandmother, great great? When I ask that question, almost nobody can tell you. A few people do. They know, and they might say, hey, he was a ranch or a farm or something. Thing is, you have 16 of them. Do you know what they all 16 did? Most people could maybe even tell you one or two. But that's the bad news is. And the good news is, our great great grandkids, they're not going to care what we did for work. They're just not going to care. But the kind of parent we are, whether we know it or not, the stuff that our parents, our grandparents, great grandparents, it's affecting us now more than we know. Sometimes you can't even you can't put your finger on it exactly because it's not very visible. But the influence we have is
I
going to
agree,
go on a
man.
long
I mean,
time.
I think it's like me being a foster child. There's a lot of things that come, like parenting has an interesting place in my life because I didn't have the same mom, same dad, right? I had a foster family, but it's a unique dynamic of that foster family. But there's so much that carries on from my childhood, even if it's the thing of I don't ever want to live in that kind of environment, right? Or I don't want to be poor like I was poor. But you do learn, you gather a lot. And I think what you do with those lessons, I think that's where the magic's at. Because like you chose this interesting lesson that I'm sure your siblings, have different lessons, but that lesson is a guiding light. It's almost like a guiding principle. And the crazy thing is you could have took it in a whole different way. I think all of us have these moments in life where we could take these moments, and it's the meaning we choose to give the moment that gives our life the meaning. And then from there we can progress out and do different things. Were there any other lessons that came from her, besides the tree? Because I'm sure like that might have spawned different ideas or different things. But I think it's a powerful perspective. It's your mom to you, but it's also like, man, do your own thing in this world, right? Be you, don't conform. Anything else
Yeah.
stand out?
It's a good question. First of all, I got to tell you, just backing up what you said, one of the things where you get to choose what things mean. And so we're not determined by, if our parents blew it.
Yeah.
We can change, but they still have a huge effect,
Yeah.
right? And so we want to make sure that effect that we're leaving can be a good one. There's so many things that my mom did that affect me, and just little things, little comments. And I mean, one time she was in the hallway with me and she was telling me that she believed in Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That's affected me profoundly.
Yeah.
You know what
I
I'm saying?
believe that. I definitely know what you mean. It's a whole
So
different thing with you. A whole different
it took five. It
Yeah.
took 5 seconds, but that moment I can still hear. I can still hear the moment where she
Yeah.
told me that, and now it's been. It's probably been. I don't remember exactly even how old I was at the moment, but I
Yeah.
can still hear her
There's a
voice.
lot that I'm here. So
Things
this
like
is
that.
maybe my brain does this when we have these podcasts. I try to think like, what's the thing that nobody's thinking of? What's the thing nobody's paying attention to? And I think in all of this, there's a lot of families that have parents that say or do things, and their kids in one ear out the other, right? But there was a way that those things landed on you, not just because of the loss, but my guess is she's a good mom, right? She shut up, she loved, so that these are things you have with a warmth of memory, right? And I do know that that's both of us
Yeah.
have this aspect where like fatherhood's a big piece of our lives. Do you find that part of you lives on in her through how you parent your kids now?
Well, I hope so. I hope so. And some of it I've had to learn. Not everything that I got from my parents was 100% spot on, or some
Yeah.
of it was even painful. But like, I do. I think the things that she did, I think they will affect generations. I think they're affecting my
Mhm.
kids today. I think they'll affect my
Yeah.
children's children. I think and it will go on for a long time. I really do.
It's a good thing. I mean, I think it's a good thing because nowadays we have this. We were talking about on the phone previously. Like, there's this interesting dynamic of parenthood that we live in a world today that is not the same as it was. We're preparing our kids for a world we'll never be part of, and we can't really figure out in the real time, let alone the future. So I'd love to kind of like we'll call it head down into pathway of parenting, right? Because both of us are parents. We both are entrepreneurs in a sense of like business, and we do our thing. But I think there's also this dynamic that like it's worth nothing if I don't have my family intact, if I don't have that base there. So do you mind unpacking your familiar dynamic, or sorry, familial dynamic? Wife, kids, all that fun stuff, so we kind of know what we're working with for your life.
Yeah. Well, I have a wonderful wife. She's basically a spiritual
Yeah.
supermodel. She's always helping people, just trying to help people out. I've got five
Nice.
wonderful children, just great kids. And I feel like I should say this, and I know it's a little bit off what your question, but I feel like I should say it. There's this thing my
Mm.
brother told me that has actually super
Mm.
helped my parenting. He told me about this book called Glenn Latham's Power of Positive Parenting that has helped me be a parent. And I know it's a little bit off what you were saying,
No,
but I
it's not
just
off.
want to
Let's
touch on
go,
it
man. Whatever
briefly.
you want to go with.
He basically, and it changed the way I parented in some ways, because he said, the best way to influence your kids is to catch them doing something
Mhm.
right. And I think as a parent, we're so keyed in to try to, sometimes we want to correct them and say, hey, we're going to punish you if you don't do something right, or I'm going to point out all your negative thoughts. But they've actually shown through the research, and I've actually got the book right here on my desk. It's this Glenn Latham,
I got on
Power of
Amazon in the
Positive
background
Parenting.
right now. As soon as you said it, I was like,
Oh, you got
here
it on
we
the
go.
background. Oh, yeah. And basically, oh, sorry. And basically, what he's saying is like that behaviors are like seeds and attention's like water. And if you want a behavior in your
Mhm.
kids to grow, you water the behaviors you want to see grow with attention. It's the most effective way to shape behavior. So a lot of times, you've seen the kid walks in and the parent says, I can't believe you stayed up till 3 a.m. and you didn't make your bed, and you're playing video games too much, and you're doing this, and you got a C- in math or whatever it was. And what they're inadvertently doing without knowing it is they're watering the behaviors they
Yeah.
don't want to see grow
Mhm.
with attention. And so it's so much more effective, I think, to try to catch them
Yep.
doing something right. It doesn't mean you can't correct them.
Yeah.
That's not what I'm saying. It's saying when they do something that's a behavior you
Water it.
want. And I didn't. When you ask about my family dynamic, going back to that, for the first few years, I
Mhm.
was horrible at this. I mean, and by the way, I still
Yeah,
am
you're human,
sometimes.
man.
Okay,
It makes sense.
but my daughter came in one time years ago, and she said, "Hey, Dad, surprise! I got ready for school. I made my bed. I I made my lunch. I've got
Yeah.
dressed. I'm ready to go." And I just kind of learned this principle, and I went to my wife in the back in the closet, and I said, "Hey, let's see if this works. I mean, this is a behavior we like. She got up, she got ready for school, she made her bed. Let's give
Yeah.
it a lot of attention." So I did. I went out there and I said, "Hey, wow, your bed looks great. You made your lunch. You did this and that." Well, the interesting thing is she did it
Yeah.
again. When we kept giving it attention, she did it again. She did it for years. I mean, I really believe it
Yeah.
works. I just wish I'd learned it
I'm
a
doing.
little
I'm gonna
earlier.
try this today,
You know.
man. This is gonna be something. So my real life, I got a youngest son. I have an oldest son. My youngest son's a twin, but he's an hour and 1 minute younger. So we call him the baby. He ain't a baby, but we do have this dynamic where like he's the one that battles me all the time on just hard work. I'm a person that's we have a family kind of structure how we do things. We're not big on like you have to win games, you have to be all these accolades. However, you must give effort, and I want a physical aspect to it as well because there's something about giving mental and physical effort that I think adapts a human being in ways that most people can't, because they can do mental stuff, but the physical will shut them down. So if I can get you to do both, right, we're good. We like to do it in sports. I tell them, hey, I don't care what sport you choose, find the one, but you will play one. And we're built like this. This is our whole unit in the family. All of us are on. The one guy, man, he kind of fights it. And so funny, yesterday, we were having a whole long, hard day of me trying to get him to, and then I told him, look, you're going to go to practice. Here's what's going to happen. I'm not going to tell anybody anything, but after practice, I have a few people that are there that I know that I'm going to ask them, how did you do? And without them getting prompted by me, the response needs to be, Torian worked harder than anybody else, and you were in the front of every single line, and you fought to be there. Right? That's what I need to hear from them. And if they don't say anything, if anything opposite of that, we're gonna have a problem, right? And so this is not the positive parenting, I would say, just yet. But we get to this moment where my wife and I dropped him off, took our daughter to track practice. At track practice, unprompted, one of the moms who was there sends me a message in a video. Your son's out here killing it. The kid's working. He's in front of the lines, like literally unprompted. And so, he came back. He's in a better mood. He's doing his thing. And in the car, I've been on him. Like, it was a tough, long day. And I say, hey, man, good job today. But that was it. And in my head, as you're telling me this, like, I want to, when I'm done, have a private moment with him and be like, hey, yesterday, I'm really proud of how you did things. Like, water that. And the funny thing is, tell me, do you notice as a dad that sometimes that's hard to do? Like when, because it's like the hard-nosed guy, I got to be right. I find that it is, and not that I fight it, but it is inherently a little bit weirder for, I think, us to go celebrate our kids in moments like that, as opposed to because we're always getting on the stuff they're doing wrong.
Yeah. No, I think it's if you don't consciously choose to look for the good, that default to finding what's wrong happens all the time. It's just and I think I like what you said about like pushing your kids, because I think as a dad, there's this unique ability to find the strength in our kids that is unique to dads. I mean, to be able to do that. So I think that's awesome that you're doing it. I do think that like you said, like water and take good job. They say that really the research shows, and you're reading this book, they're like, look, the best way to get rid of problem behavior is to focus on the good behavior, which I read that they put it about 100 times in there. The best way to get a problem behavior is to focus on the good behavior. So I've been thinking about that in relationships, like if you're in a relationship and somebody's doing something that annoys you, well, if you give it attention, you actually, like let's say, somebody leaves the socks out and that's just really hard for you. Ignore it, because you don't want that behavior. But as soon as they do something right, if you can, this book talks about this story. There was this kid getting sent to the principal's office all the time, constantly getting sent to the principal's office. And it was such a big deal. They said, we're going to call this counselor in and take a look at it. And the counselor came in. She wanted to see what was going on. So she's sitting there watching. And the kid is doing a lot of stuff right, but getting zero attention for it. But as soon as the kid did something wrong, the teacher would go, oh, you did something wrong. I'm going to write your name on the board. He'd do something else wrong. He'd get a check mark. And all the time he's getting a little attention here. And then another check mark and another check mark. And eventually they have to march him down to the principal's office. And of course the kids are kind of giving him attention. But then when he gets to the principal's office, the lady's like, well, I knew you'd be here again. And sits him at this, right next to this window, where the kids are walking by. It's like lunchtime, and he's waving to his friends, and the friends are waving back. So he's getting all this attention for being at the principal's office behind this window. And the counselor said this. She said, you know what? This behavior is completely predictable. Whenever he does something right, you're starving it. He's getting zero water. But the second he does something wrong, he's getting all this attention, including with his friends at the window and this office and everything. And so if we can find a way to be positive, like when our kids do perform, when they do knock it out, when they do push themselves and get in front of the line, or when they make their bed, like my daughter did, just an acknowledgement. It doesn't have to be every single time. In fact, they found it's most effective when it's kind of staggered. So it doesn't have to be every single time my dad's going to praise me. But, a sincere, wow, I really liked how you did that. That was great. I was really proud of the way you handled that situation. And when you can praise them for that, it's the most effective way to shape human behavior. I mean, it works even in work. I mean, we get paid, people work, and then they get paid. Well, they're actually getting a reward for working. So people go to work all day long.
That makes sense. Interesting, because as a dad, that's not something we all were having as an experience growing up. I think for me, it definitely didn't have that experience. I was that kid that went to the principal's office a lot, and
Yeah,
then I find that because it's that normal, like here's the thing: is I have no problem doing it, but I have to battle, which I win the battle every time. That little voice that's like, yeah, icky, you gotta go in here and say good job. So a lot of parents don't do that. And I think there's also the ones that I think
yeah,
overdo it, right? Because then there is going to be a place in the world
oh
where
yeah,
your kid needs to take over that themselves. They need to be celebrating themselves for that positive, that self for the win, because you're not going to always get it from your boss or your spouse or your
absolutely.
friends. But you still got to do the action. So at some point, I think there's got to be this. In my head, I've not read the book, but like you do it, and then they get to a point of ingraining the habit, and then they take it over. I think that'd be nice if they can have pride around that thing in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So it
Yeah,
kind of becomes their identity. One of the things I like that you and I chatted about, I think, was just that sometimes the
yeah,
stuff that's hard for you, eventually, like sometimes the stuff that's the hardest for you in life
yeah,
becomes your
very much
superpower
so.
later on, you know?
There has to be. And I
So,
think we talked about is not robbing the
I mean,
kids of their hardships.
I yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think about in your situation, Anthony, you've been through a lot. Your youth, you had a
Yeah,
ton of things that were probably hard for you. And now you're teaching people about the importance of identity. You're teaching people about the importance of being a good dad. You're pushing yourself when things are hard. In some ways, your pain already is
hmm
becoming your superpower. I mean, it really is. You're allowing it to be that. Now, how do we teach our kids to let our pain become our superpower instead of letting it crush them, right? Because if we can teach them that pain can crush you, but you can also teach them, hey, when you push yourself. I mean, I like how you've been. I mean, NFL, all kinds of stuff where you've had to actually push
yeah.
yourself harder than you thought you could, and that ability to do that as a dad
I agree, man.
just seems
It's
really
hard. I mean,
valuable.
the funny thing is, it's easy for me to do it now, right? For me, but it's very difficult for the kids that have a lack of grit or they don't have. Here's the thing: I look at athletes right now, and I look at the ones that are playing football. For example, I live in a suburb area, and so a lot of the kids I'm around, they don't have a whole lot. And so like sports that's they got to do it. They don't get out. That's how it was for me. If I don't play sports I'm gonna be stuck here, man. I don't want to be stuck here. Let me figure this thing out. I had reason. I had grit. My kids don't have that. I have not spoiled my children. My wife has, if anybody has. But the thing for me is I need them to have those internal intangibles I have without having to experience what I've experienced to get them, which is an interesting oxymoron because one is I have the information to listen, but kids don't listen to their parents. They'll listen to the guy across the street more than listen to parents. And that guy's a cool job. It's kind of a weird dynamic. But how do you find that you navigate the journey of being a father with 5 kids, kind of knowing that like you do have to teach them lessons that are hard for them to experience, but they need to experience them?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, it's really interesting because I think kids, if we look for the opportunities, they come with this desire to do hard things, but sometimes they're quashed by us, by parents, right? So I'll tell you one experience, and I may have mentioned this before, but my daughter came to me. She's 5. She was 5 years old, and she knows I like to hike. There's a mountain near our home that's about
Mm.
11,700 feet tall, and it's a big mountain. It's a 15-mile hike. And she came to me and says, "Dad, I want to hike that mountain
Yeah.
with you." She knows I like to hike it occasionally, and she's 5. And really, it could be something that I
Mm.
could have just said, "No, you're too young." Luckily, on this particular occasion, I said, "Well, tell me why you want to hike it." She goes, "I just want to hike it with you, Dad." I said, "Well, if you want to do it, you can. I'll let you, but I want you to know
Yeah.
it's going to be hard. Your feet are going to hurt. We're going to have to hike all day long, and we're going to have to be in the sun and hike. And you sure you're okay with that?" And she goes, "I'm sure." And so, luckily, in this, I haven't always, I've blown it lots of times, but in this particular situation, I did. I took her with me. We went hiking, and she hiked.
Wow.
She hiked, 15 miles, and she got to the top of that mountain. There was actually some people up there who were They were
Yeah.
clapping, giving her high, she kind of had this confidence that I can do stuff, that I can do this. And even though, we got back and she was in that, but I think, if you listen to your kids, I have a son who wants to learn engineering.
Yeah.
The truth is I don't know anything about engineering. I
That's
don't know how
good.
to code. He wants to learn to code. If I can find a way to give him an opportunity when he says, "Hey dad, I want to invent, I want to go code." And if I can find a way to either go invent with them or maybe even find someone who's good at inventing, help him, so he wants to have this challenge that I'm not good at. But if I can give him opportunities, because I think they come in born with this kind of wanting to, and and sometimes we as parents quash it.
No, I get it. That
Without
doesn't
meaning
make
to,
sense because
maybe.
mostly there's like a little video I saw of this kid who's running marathons, and people are out here, in the middle of this kid running. He's like 5. They're shaming the mom and dad like publicly. They're this how you gonna force your kids, and he's like, no, my kid
Oh
asked me
yeah.
to do this. I'm not going to tell my kid no, you can't run a marathon because you're 5. He's not hurt. He has fun. He's running around. It's crazy
Right.
because our society. I think here's what I think, and this is maybe a little controversial. I think the biggest problem our society has right now is everybody assumes that no one's supposed to ever have their feelings be hurt. And it creates a soft society because everybody has to feel good. And I think what they're looking at is this kid running a marathon going, "Oh, that kid probably doesn't want to do it. He probably feels bad." That's not the case. Or he's gonna have a struggle. And if he's in the middle of the race and he wants to give up and mom says, "No, you finish this thing," like that, it's gonna make him feel bad. So God forbid, let's take this kid out of here. How dare you subject your kid to that? Yet they're pissed at the people later on in life who can't hold a job, who are doing things that are heinous for society. But really, I look at those people and go, they just couldn't do hard stuff. They knew to get a job, they knew to go to school, they knew to they knew to be a good husband or
Yeah.
wife. It was just too hard for them. So then they found these backdoor loophole ways to do stuff that damages society. Yet when it's the moment of, hey, buck up, work a little harder. Like, yeah, your feelings hurt, but sometimes your feelings suck, right? This conversation isn't allowed to be had anymore.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right. I'm 100% in agreement with you, Anthony. I mean, you're exactly right. I actually applaud those parents for letting them have a challenge, for giving someone something that they could say, "Hey, you know what?" And obviously, I mean, obviously, could you go too far? I mean, sure. I mean, you could put people in a situation where it's dangerous and they're going to get hurt severely. But most of the time, that limit is much, much further than a lot of people in our culture think. And being able to say, "You know what? As a dad, you and I, our job is to help our kids be tough enough to survive
100%.
life, even if we're not there."
100%.
You know what I mean? And a good parent works his way out of the job by letting their kids have experiences that can help them grow. And that doesn't happen without some pain, unfortunately. It doesn't happen
Yeah.
without some hard stuff. It doesn't mean we go out and try to find things that are going to hurt our kids. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying we allow them to have challenges that stretch them, that are hard for them, and that helps them become
Yeah, it's funny.
competent,
This is
awesome
the
people.
the person I battle the most of this, and my wife. She'll have this, but it's my wife, man. She sent me a video the other day. I was out in the camp in Colorado with my youngest son, and honestly, I was just talking to one of the pro players. He plays for the Colts, named Tony, and we're talking about he's a 1 year old, and I got this guy going to college here pretty soon, and my old youngest son is about to be 13, and I'm like, the one big thing is it's teaching him things that are in him. He doesn't have the desire to do it, or it's hard for him. Therefore, pushing him to do it is it's uncomfortable for him. And my wife says you're being mean. And so what happens is I'll be getting on him for cutting a corner, like he has a chore. He'll cut the corner, like he'll go pick up half the poop and leave a turd half picked up there. I'm like, why didn't you pick it up? Oh, no, you just cut the corner, right? That's not okay. And why would you cut it? Like, so I go in on him, right, to teach him this lesson of discipline. Anyway, so this is the thought, and my wife goes, "You're being mean." I go, "I'm not being mean. I'm parenting. Here's the thing we want to do. Like, we gotta get this kid ready for life. I gotta raise a man now." So she sends this video. Steve Harvey. Some woman says, "Hey, Steve, how do I handle this? I see my husband going in on my boy sometime, and I'll get in the middle of it, and I'll stop him because I think he's being a little too rough. He's being mean to our son." And Steve Harvey goes, "So, yeah, I get that you want to do that." She says, but he says, but you have to just get out of the way. She goes, "What do you mean get out of the way?" He goes, "Well, why are you getting in his way?" She goes, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Let me think of it this way. Do you love your husband?" She goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Is your husband the man of your dreams?" "Yeah." "Do you hope your boys turn out to be like your husband?" "Yeah." "Then get out of his way and let him raise men in his image." Right? He is showing you that he's looking at the boy and saying, this boy isn't doing things the way I would do it. I now have to move this boy in the right direction. And so for her, it's mean because it's uncomfortable for the son. However, she loves the man her husband is. And I think that's the interesting part is whether it's the society or a spouse looking at these dads going, you're being mean. It's like, hey, but the world's going to be way more mean. The officer, the job, the demands on his thing. If he can't handle discipline, because he finishes by saying this. He says, if you don't let your husband do this, you're going to have an undisciplined man. And the problem is in society, an undisciplined man ends up in the hospital or in prison. Period. That's because it's a trajectory they can't stay disciplined to something. So your son needs your husband to guide him to discipline, and no kid likes that. It'll be uncomfortable for every child to be disciplined.
I agree with you, and I'm going to tell you, I think the research even shows that most of the guys, for example, who are in prison, like you're saying, are there. A lot of them didn't have dads that were there to guide them, like you're talking about. To could say, you know what, son, we need to do it differently. In fact, there was somebody who said something to this effect. I'm trying to quote it. He said, if we don't fix marriages and families, including parents, everything else we do in society will be like straightening deck chairs on the Titanic. And here's what I mean by that. To have a dad who's keyed in and loves his kid, even if he makes some mistakes, but he loves him enough to correct him, right? That's where the problem, if you don't have that, starts later. So the things we're seeing in society right now, where guys are doing crazy things, they're going to prison, and a lot of them, if you look back, the problem started 20 years ago when a dad wasn't there, when a dad said, you know what, son, we're going to treat people with respect. I mean, you see people who are in prison, there's school shootings, there's all kinds of stuff, and I'm not saying every one of them, but a lot of them didn't have a dad who did exactly what you did, which is said, you know what, we're going to correct it when it needs to be done. Now, of course, there's effective way to correct. I mean, if you're constantly negative and always saying you're bad, you're wrong, and not catch them, you could also, catch them saying like, hey, you really picked up this piece of dog crap. You did a good job on it. But I do think that ability to self-regulate and to realize that things can be hard, and that's okay. I got to say one more thing. There was this guy in my neighborhood. His name was Brody. Brody did this workout. I think it was called the Spartacus workout. And he said it was so hard. Maybe you're familiar with it, but he did it. Yeah. And he said, I hated it. It didn't feel good. He goes, but somehow I committed to do it, so I did it again the next day. I still hated it. I was so sore I could barely walk. He goes, I hated it. He did it again and again and again and again. And every time he was done, he just hated it. It didn't feel good. But he said something that was really interesting. He said, sometime around week 2.5 or 3, I got to the end of this workout. And for the first time, I felt like I was just getting started. Yeah. I wanted to do the workout again. And so here's the interesting thing. He did what was hard when it didn't feel good. But he goes, you can actually lead your feelings. People think that feelings just come from outer space and they come in somewhere. The truth is, we can lead our feelings with our actions. You probably experienced this where you work out and it's hard, but at some point you get to a point where like, this feels good. And you have to sometimes do it before you feel it. And then your feelings follow later, like with Brody. He hated doing this workout, but 3 weeks later, he loved doing the workout. And it's our job as dads to be able to tell our kids, you know what? You can lead your feelings. You're right. It doesn't feel good right now. Sorry, this is hard. But there's going to come a point where you understand why we're doing it.
Every male figure that's been in my life that I know made me better in the moment, right? It was always hindsight. I hated that man in the moment. I hated my dad at times. I hated my coaches at times. I hated everybody. I just didn't literally like them as humans. It's a point in time of my college coach when he was in town, not even work with, was in town. I was like, I hate this dude, right? And it wasn't until I got out of college, in with the Buccaneers, that I had my first coach is John Gruden. They call him Chucky. He's one of the hard-nosed guys. But he was like a Chucky doll. He was a walk in the park for me, comparatively to my college coach who was just a headache. And I realized that every man that has made me better, I hated in the moment. Didn't have a love, right? But now, look back, I go, man, that dude He made me a better man. He taught me discipline that I can't shake now. The way that I show up on time, the way that I communicate, the way that I do things at a certain level, because he wouldn't accept anything less than that. And it was very difficult for me. If you'd have looked at it from the outside in and go, that guy's being mean to those guys. He's getting mean to these college athletes. But without that readjustment, I am an undisciplined person. And my intellect with my spontaneity and lack of discipline would be horrible to be a good husband, be horrible to be a good man in this world. And I think that's the thing that we're not noticing in society. So I do agree. Like if we don't figure that household thing out, that parenting thing out, that dynamic there for boys and for girls, I think that what ends up happening is, you're going to have people who are later on have the ability to hide behind computers. They can do the little stuff they want to say. They can try to find ways to backdoor the world. And we're building a world that appeases the weak. And it bothers me because if you let the world be led by the weak, the complaining people, then what happens is there's no backbone and everything slides into oblivion. And there's got to be a point when somebody stands up and goes, "Hey guys, that's too far. We've gone pretty far. Let's go to put a little hold right here. Let's all figure out how to manage this. It's hard, yeah, I know, but be a big boy and girl, navigate this." But we don't have a lot of people doing that, man.
Exactly. And that's exactly why the world needs good, strong dads who can teach people that when they're 5 and 6 and 8 and 12. So when they get to the point where they really need it later, it's already natural for them. And so there's this desperate need to have good dads who can, with love, but firmness too, teach their kids to do hard things.
Teach the kids to do hard. That should be the name of the podcast. Teach your kids to do hard things. Because I'm real big on that. Like I need my kids able to do hard things, man. That's it. If subject yourself to it, do hard things, because there's a pride that comes out of it, a skill set that comes out of it, and life in and of itself is hard. But let's say that a certain life thing is, 50 pounds. It's called a physical metaphor. If you never find a way to get stronger than 50 pounds, and every time you face it, it feels overwhelming. However, if you can lift 100 pounds, it's easy. So life can be easy. Like it genuinely can. All the things that people are facing right now, I think collectively can be easy. When we look back at the 50s and 60s, man, they were doing stuff. They weren't out here complaining about all the stuff going on. Was it a perfect time? Absolutely not. A guy like myself couldn't go do certain things. I get this. But overarching, we'll call it human, people could do hard things, man. And when you could do hard things, you created this world. And there comes that statement that I heard first Tony Robbins say. My brother said it differently at one point. I kind of found it. He says, good times, we'll call it easy times, creates weak people. Weak people create hard times. Hard times create strong people. Strong people create easy times. Again, easy times create weak people. And that's the cycle of the world. And I think we had that, we'll call it baby boomer window of people that were strong men, strong women. They got things done. They got the economy to a great place. Life got good. And then it got so easy that we created weak people. And I think weak people is what we have like in office in an aspect now. And you have these weak people that are creating very hard times. And so while I hate the experience of it now, I got to feel there's going to be a window of time in the next, 20, 30 years. We have a very strong society because of the hardships they're creating to make our people have to be strong right now.
I 100% agree with you, Anthony. I really do. And you reminded me, I got to tell you, I was in the office of this guy. He was a CEO. He owned multiple companies. And we were just chatting a little bit, kind of like we're chatting. And I asked him, and I said, and I just guessed, I said, "You grew up on a farm, didn't you?" And he looked at me and goes, "Yeah." I go, "You were a farm boy?" And he goes, "Yeah." I mean, basically, and he started telling me, he goes, "Yeah, I grew up in Idaho on this farm. I had to get up every morning at 4 a.m. And some days it was 40 below in the winter. I mean, when he was 5 and 6 and 7, he had to get up to help milk the cows. And it's amazing how many I've met quite a few people who are quite successful, and the percentage of them that grew up on a farm where they had to get up at 4 a.m. and had this difficult experience. I personally, Anthony, I'm looking for a farmer. I don't live on a farm. I almost wish I did. In fact, I may need to move for my kids' sake. But I'm trying to find a farm. There's this guy who's offered to let my kids shovel pig manure. And I thought, you know what? That's an experience I need my kids to have. It's a horrible, probably smelly experience, but it lets them know that, hey, you can get in, you can get dirty.
Yeah.
And we can work hard and you'll still be okay. And I think exactly what you're talking about, letting people have that experience where you can say, we're going to work hard, even if it's 4 a.m, even if it's really cold. And that builds the character. And in this particular CEO I was talking about, I personally believe the reason he was so successful and he had done so well in business was because
The hard thing.
when he was young, he had to work. And so those hard experiences are actually diamonds in the rough. They really do help us. And I agree with what you said, that we're kind of getting to the point where if things always have to be easy, the ability to be strong when you need
we're talking
it
about
isn't
kids
there
too, but
because it's been
this
too
does
easy.
not fall on should not fall on the deaf ears of adults who are in the aspect of you're an adult. You can process this conversation. So if you find yourself going, yeah, I tend to avoid hard things, which the world's been, I think, catered to do that. So immediate gratification, TV at your fingers in every dynamic you can imagine. There's food everywhere. Like the world's been so simplified that I don't think our brain, actually there's some neuroscientists that talk about we are not designed to be able to have everything be so easy. That's the problem we have. I think if they go back to the days of tribes and stuff, it was hard. You had to go hunt for food and find food and create, all the things and tools to make the food, prepare the food and do this stuff. And it was long to have a meal. And so the idea that we can just do anything, our brain doesn't at a biological level know how to handle all good all the time. So it finds weird things to do and it becomes problematic for us. And so this is not just children, people. This is adults too. We all need to be able to do hard things because like like this morning, I got up at 7 a.m. I got to bed late. I was like, I got a hard workout I got to get done. And my buddy and I got a workout in for 2 hours. And I don't like any part of it. I have to tell myself to warm up, right? But when I'm done, I feel great. I feel good. I feel confident. And it's not that this thing of like, I feel like I take on the world, but I feel like I can take on my day. And I feel confident in the day. And I feel confident leading my wife and my kids as a husband and as a father. I feel confident hopping a podcast like this. And that's the only thing that separates unsuccessful from successful, in my opinion. Can you do the hard things when you don't want to do them, like you alluded to, consistently? Yeah, man.
You just nailed it on the head. I think we both agree on that, Anthony. And I think that's one of the reasons you've been so good at what you're doing is because you have consistently over time. I mean, you've shown it in the NFL. You've shown it shown it with your success in what you're doing. And I think you're right. Just do hard things even when you don't want to.
Exactly, man. So in the world of what you're doing, man, where can I send people to kind of hang on to your words? Because you got more of what you talk about, how you do things as a speaker, as a coach, as how you guide and show up in this world, man. You're a person I think people need to be able to tune into and pay attention. So where would I send folks to find out more about you?
Well, I've got my funny first name. If you just put my first name in, there's nobody. It's really easy to get the website because nobody else has my first name unless you're in my family. So it's EKS is in Sam, AYN is in Nancy.com. So EKSAYN.com. And you could. I wrote a book called "What I Want My Children to Know Before I Die."
There's a book I'm gonna grab that. I like to grab books that resonate in a sense, and I'm always authors are different humans, so I don't always grab all books. I like to get cliff notes, but I'm excited to actually see what happens in your head as I read through that bad boy. There's actually a good book by Joe DeCina too. I can't think of what it's called, like the 10 rules or 10 laws or something of parenting. I don't know, but I'm in that window, man, of trying to make sure that I'm not just here to give my kids things. If I give them things, I ruin their lives. I need to teach them things that they can use and be able to get things for themselves. You do that right, I think we're going to have a good society. But hey, dude, I appreciate you. I have a final question, though. And this question you can answer however you want. Here's the question. What promise did God make to the world when he created you?
I love that question. I don't know if I know the answer quite yet, but I do know that I am on a mission to help as many marriages and families as I can because I think it's the thing that's going to help our society more than anything else, is to be good dads like you're talking about, to be good husbands, to fix our families, because we can do anything we want. If there's not enough good parents, there's never going to be enough policemen. If we don't have enough good parents, there will never be. The stuff we're seeing that's going crazy in the world and the stuff we've talked about today is because of a lack of parents who've stepped up. Mm-hmm. And so I feel it is my mission, whether or not God wanted me to share
Yeah,
that parenting is it's a big deal. And we need to take it seriously and be grateful. It's a huge
I agree, man.
opportunity.
I think
Great, it's
that
an
is
awesome,
it's a
awesome
great calling,
opportunity.
man. And I think sometimes the answer isn't supposed to be solidified and perfect because half the time I don't know what I'm supposed to do every day, right? I get up and do my thing, but I have a guiding light, I think, that calls to my heart of when things feel like they're supposed to be done to do them. So I think you have a similar call I can feel. But man, I appreciate you coming on, spending time and hanging with us. You could have been doing anything else, but you're here. Same for those who are listening. Oh man, for sure, man. We got to stay in touch too.
Thanks,
Those of you
Anthony.
guys who are tuned in right now, hanging out with us. I hope that this conversation aided you in some way. If something you heard was beneficial, I would love for you to rate, review, all that fun stuff. But also, if you found something that somebody else needs to hear from X, man, just share the podcast with that person directly or put it out into the ether, man. Sometimes just dropping this thing into the feed, somebody is in the right place at the right time, picks it up, and it could change your life, all because you chose to share it. So please do so. Outside of that, as always, make the most of your off shift moments so you can make shift happen. It's Anthony Trucks and EksAyn Anderson signing off. Hey, thank you for tuning in to the Oz Shift podcast. I pray that we gave something amazing to your life. And if you found this episode served you in some way, I would love if you could share it with people you know, people you love, as well as your community, because you never know who needs that simple little seed that can grow into something amazing for their life. And the actual training doesn't stop here. If you want your free copy of the show notes sent to you after every episode so you can get the major points consolidated down, simply go to textanthony.com and message the word notes. Till next time, make shift happen.